Hello, welcome to Calling Out with Susan Pinsky. I am Susan Pinsky. I don't know if you know that, but now you do. I'm here today with a great group of people to talk about the future of AI, transhumanism, and Neuralink, and some other subjects that everybody needs to know about psychically, because we don't have all the answers, but we do have ideas of what could be coming for humanity in the future. I have a lot of interest into this. And I'm here with my husband, actually, who's willing to sit in with my crazy ideas, and a psychic medium, Dr. Drew Pinsky, welcome, and a psychic medium, Rebecca Fearing, who has been a regular on Calling Out with Susan Pinsky. We've been doing this show since 2012, and I think I've used a psychic in every way. Rebecca has been a good friend, but she's had some really interesting thoughts on the afterlife, I guess you call it the metaverse, portals. She talks about all these strange things, flying cars and whatnot. And I've always kind of went, okay, all right, sure, whatever. Okay, whatever you think, Rebecca. But today I really want her to dive into that with Drew, a scientist and a transhumanist expert who is waiting in the wings. His name is Joe Allen. He's the author of Dark Aeon, and it's about transhumanism and the war against humanity. He is an expert in tech, religion, and here to speak on where he sees the future of AI and the threat it poses to humanity. And don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. He's devoted an entire chapter in his book to a 55-point plan to stay human. So, and you can find him at joebot.substack.com/singularityweekly, and then also on Twitter at joebotxyz and Twitter. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Susan. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Okay, so everybody thinks I'm nuts, just so you know. I've been called, crazy, wacky. I talk to dead people with psychic mediums all the time. And, I listen to their stories and I sometimes just go, wow, that sounds really interesting. I wonder if it's going to be true, or it is true. And so Rebecca is going to sort of give her psychic insight into metaverse. Okay, so I asked her, I said, Rebecca, what do you want to do on the show when you come on next time? She says, metaverse. And I said, well, what's that? I have no idea, I've heard of it a little bit, but we thought we would have you sort of listen to her story and then give your insights as far as whether or not you think some of the stuff that she's saying is crazy or real or, could happen eventually. I don't know.
Okay, I'll hold up a white card if it sounds real, black card if it sounds crazy. But I'll have them, you'll only see the back of the card. You'll have to tell me which one is which. You'll have to use psychic powers to tell me the color.
She might be able to do that, actually. Yeah. Okay, so when you think about metaverse, Rebecca, I want to know what you're talking about. Like, what is it?
Well, it's not something that I've just read about or heard about. In fact, I didn't even think about anything like this before ever. But about 40 years ago, when I was going to a party with my friend Michelle, and we were trying to get to Nels Van Patten, and his friend, I don't know, they were having some get-together or something. We got in my car. It was a big Ford Torino station wagon, so it was nothing fancy. And we started off, we decided not to take the freeway. We decided to, for some reason, take city streets. And as we went down
Ventura
Boulevard. Then we came to Winnetka,
okay,
which is supposed to be, Winnetka, no big deal. But as soon as we turned down this street, and we felt kind of familiar but unfamiliar, so we stopped another group of young people and asked them which way we were looking for Valley Circle.
Okay.
And they told us which way to go, but we're like, we did it. But when we got there, we couldn't even go further. There was just a big hedge, and so we couldn't go that way. So we decided to take, I think, a left. And then that's when everything just went haywire. Like I just said to my friend Michelle, weren't we just in Woodland Hills? And she says, well, yeah, what are you talking about? I said, we're not in Woodland Hills anymore. We're like in Van Nuys or something. How did that happen? Or Studio City? And she's like, no, it's not real, Rebecca. That we're in, Woodland Hills. I go, no, we're not. And I'll prove it to you, because if we continue to go down the street, we'll run into, blah, blah. I don't remember what it was, but we didn't. We ran into, one of the main points was a pancake house that is actually still there, right on Havenhurst and Ventura.
Okay, so what's the point?
The point is that we were lost in this place for 3 hours. And we know the way home.
And you weren't using drugs or alcohol?
No, I've never done drugs. I've never drank. And neither did Michelle.
And you wanted to go to the Van Patten's house. Okay, so...
Yeah. So anyway, Michelle's crying because at this point now, she thinks she died. And she goes, you got to pinch me, see if I'm alive. I go, no, you're very much alive. I said, but help me figure this out. We need to get out of here. So make a long story short, I saw another world, was exactly like ours, but was in a lot of ways everything was complete opposite. Okay, so your house that was on this side of the street was on the other side of the street. Or what we did see, we saw another pancake house because we decided to turn around, and the pancake house that we saw at first was crowded and had a lot of people. And then when we went back, there was another pancake house and there was nobody in there. It looked closed.
Okay.
And we couldn't find our way. We were lost for like 3 hours. And I know this sounds really crazy, but I grew up here, she grew up here. And to make a long story short, I said there's more to this world than we know. There are multi-dimensions. And I said we've seen it with our own eyes. I mean, there's a lot more to this story, but...
like the upside down in Stranger Things.
Yeah, it was very, very weird. And in fact, I ran into Nels Van Patten. He remembers us not getting to that party and kind of being a real, a-hole to us.
Like, where were you?
Yeah, where were you? So, I mean...
Where were the hot chicks?
Yeah, he would back up. At the time, I was young. I was only in my 20s. So,
oh, my God, the 70s, right?
Mm-hmm. And so...
Or the 80s, I don't know.
I don't remember. Well, I think maybe it was already the 80s, but I don't remember. But anyway, so I'm just saying... There is something to this. There are worlds within worlds.
So when you look into this, like, what do you feel? Like, how does that...
I think there's worlds within worlds. I just was always confused because we were actually held back from getting home. We knew how to get home, but we couldn't do it. And so what was that? What force was that?
Yeah.
And also, if there's two of everything, is there two of us? Is there more than one of us? So I don't really know the answer to that. But I do know that there definitely worlds within worlds, and it does exist, and it is real. Would I want to have that experience again? No. But, I believe it. I saw it with my own eyes.
So she never drives there anymore. She's afraid she's going to fall into the portal again.
No, and unfortunately, my friend, who was the only witness in a very weird experience, she took her own life. And so my only witness is her.
I was going to say, I wish Michelle was here.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
She told me not to tell anybody because nobody ever would believe us. And I said, no, didn't you understand? We've actually seen and witnessed something that nobody probably else has. So that's it.
Okay. So when Joe thinks about metaverse, I think he thinks about other stuff that is different. It's more in a tech world. Drew would probably tell you that you have, you had some kind of mental problems or some psychiatric problems, from a scientific view. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think of this story? I'm going to start with Joe.
I've had all sorts of weird, anomalous experiences in my life, oftentimes with pretty readily available explanations, but not always. The idea that there are multiple dimensions, there are different ways to look at that. There are all kinds of fantasy and sci-fi writers who imagine these things. There are people who say they experience these worlds. There are, scientific theories of multiverses, that perhaps there are many different multiverses that are bubbling up in the cosmos and we inhabit just one of them. There are theories of quantum physics that little micro moments that the universe is always splitting off into different parallel universes. Maybe you could catch a glimpse of that. I don't know. I don't have a metaphysical answer for why someone would look out onto a neighborhood they should be familiar with and it would be backwards. The biological explanations I would leave to Drew. Unless psychedelics were involved, then I could tell you exactly what was happening. But what I'm reminded of is the metaverse and the conversation in general. When you think about psychic phenomena, psychic phenomena in some ways is, you could say it's the independent contractors of religion. So that organized religious institutions have stories about psychic phenomena. They have stories about being able to speak to beings beyond this world, sometimes being able to speak to the dead, although that's typically forbidden. And the psychic is doing this in a much more kind of Wild West sort of way. And when I am looking at technology, I mean, the theme of my book is looking at the ways in which technology reflects the desire in traditional religion and in non-traditional religion, sort of Wild West of psychics and so on. And so when you talk about multiple dimensions, this may not speak to your guest's experience, but without a doubt, what's being created right now is a digital replica or many digital replicas, digital twins of our world. And you can experience those in different ways. There's the more mundane way of looking into your screen. Increasingly, as the virtual reality technology gets better and better, you can experience a kind of parallel version of your world that's fully immersive. It hasn't really taken off in popularity quite yet, but years ago, I used high resolution, very kind of high grade virtual reality, and it was thoroughly impressive. I'm not sure why it hasn't taken off, but it hasn't. But what I saw in especially the kind of Google Maps world, the three-dimensional Google Maps world, was exactly what you're talking about, a parallel universe that's built off of ours. And I visited different places that I had been before, places in New York, places in Oregon, places in my home state of Tennessee. And it did give you this strange, uncanny experience of being in a kind of parallel universe that was kind of your world, but was flat, soulless, and basically built off of Google Street View. I won't speak to the metaphysics of experiencing parallel universes, but what I can say with absolute certainty is that most, if not all, of the powers claimed by psychics, most, if not all, of the powers claimed by organized religion have correlations in the transhumanist, posthumanist, and just the techno-fetishist movement. And what they're saying is either, there are two different versions of this for the most part. There are those who say that what technology is doing is making real all of the fake powers that psychics and religious leaders have claimed. They are, by and large, atheists, and they say that in a godless universe, the desires to be able to see at a distance, the desires to be able to enact your will on the world without actually moving it with your hands, the desires to speak to the dead, to speak to loved ones who have passed, the desire to speak to beings that are not human but are more intelligent than human beings and can give you advice and guidance on what the proper path in your life is. These more atheistic transhumanists would say that none of that was real. All of the cultural accumulation of organized religion and the Wild West psychics in and around that, all of that was fake, but we are creating those powers. We are bringing those dreams into existence. And already you can see the gross realization of that You can talk to the dead right now. You can talk to a chatbot that's trained on the data of the dead. You can see at a distance very easily. And I think that the power that they wield.
So since she's, let me ask you something, Joe. Since she's a psychic medium and she can see the future, maybe she could see the future of AIs. She was predicting that. She was living it like it was just a sign or something that, she was envisioning or living at the time. But Drew, I think, wants to.
I just want to unpack, because always Joe has put so much into every opportunity he has on a microphone. I just want to parse out what he was saying about the multiverse. What he's talking about is the many worlds hypothesis, which is the synthesis proposed by a guy named Everett, because there are problems with physics. There are issues still remaining. There's spooky action at distance. There are things that really bothered Einstein, and this solves many of the problems that are left behind in quantum theory and quantum physics and the math, which is that every time you take a quantum measurement, the world splits into two. One measurement this way, one measurement the other way. And that's happening billions of times, and that's how many different metaverses there are out there. Maybe, maybe not. It's dependent on the observer too, so which is kind of interesting. So there's that. Number two, it reminds me of how weak this instrument is we have up here. I mean, this thing was evolved for very specific things. I mean, our brain. And we don't perceive the world as it is. We perceive the world as our brain needed to perceive it to survive. And a lot of that was very much dependent on our social functioning and our ability to make meaning and to function in a group and to elevate ourselves. And that I think is what the metaverse that Joe is talking about is taking over. And you pointed some things out in your book. By the way, Susan strapped me to the audio book of Dark Eon. And she fell asleep, and I was listening, getting upset.
I'd already listened to it. I'd already listened to it.
And I was a lot of the stuff is very disturbing and concerning and worrisome. But there's a couple things that I wanted to ask you. One was...
Wait, but let's see. Why is Rebecca having these visions, though? That's what I want to know. Like, what do you think psychiatrically? Like, if you were...
But it wasn't a vision.
Well, you were just living, they call it a portal or a metaverse.
Well, we got on a freeway ramp. If you guys know where Casa Vega is.
Get closer, Mike.
You know where Casa Vega is, right? On Ventura Boulevard?
No, but...
Okay. Well, there's no freeway ramp right there.
Yeah.
Okay. And we actually got on a freeway ramp there. What I said to Michelle, there's no freeway ramp
So
there.
she thinks that she was living in this parallel universe for like 3 hours and was lost.
I was lost in it, and I was determined to get out of it. Who knows if I would have.
I think that you were predicting the future. I don't know why. I just feel like you were also, your brain works in a way where you're seeing stuff that other people don't see
or
don't
don't feel.
Well, it might be
More normal. I think now they're even talking about these portholes that there is. Portal. Yeah, whatever. They didn't. I even had called a specialist in paranormal stuff and to see, I said, why don't you check my car out? Because if I did go into another dimension, I must have something on my car that can prove that.
Okay.
And she didn't believe me, so she passed on that opportunity, which I wish she would have, because who knows what was on there.
All right. Well,
and
Drew,
the hook was still on the door handle.
I don't know.
I don't know. It just sounds woo-woo crazy to me, but she experienced it, and I'm going to listen. So I don't know. Drew, go ahead. You guys carry on.
So I was...
you guys are doing the nerdy analytic stuff, and some of this stuff is way over my head, so you got to dumb it down for me.
About the Everettian synthesis?
Well, yeah.
And the spooky action at a distance and the multiverse?
Yes.
Well, that's Joe's thing. He's talking about, that's what a lot of the book was about, all these different hypotheses. But be that as it may, two things I have a question about. Well, one's a comment, one's a question. Your idea about, your construct about these captains of tech that are creating this alternative world being pharaohs that want to live forever, I thought was a perfect analogy. And it made me, again, back to the weak instrument that we have in our skull, made me think that humans as they have evolved, do the same thing over and over and over and over again, just in different contexts and with different technologies. And you are absolutely right. They're doing exactly what the pharaohs had done, and they will have the exact same outcome, I'm sorry to tell you. Because when you try to upload into a digital space, this is non-digital. The biological system is non-digital. We can't even figure out how a synapse works, a single synapse, let alone the trillions and trillions of synapses and the wiring that's going on in the brain. That's a whole multiple quantums above that. We don't know how the computer of a synapse really works because it's analogical. It's not digital. The thing I was going to say, in addition to that, I'll let you comment when I'm done, which is that all this brain machinery interface requires you going into the skull. And what none of these people understand is that even if you drill a tiny hole in the skull, oftentimes you change the person. Their personality changes. You are doing something extremely ethically problematic. And if you so much as lay the tiniest electrode on the brain in one tiny spot, you are killing millions of neurons. And those electrodes need to be changed on a regular basis. So I am gravely skeptical.
So Drew really liked your book.
I love your book, but I was gravely skeptical about the brain. I've remained one of these skeptics on the brain.
These are the things that he wanted to tell you.
Neuralink makes sense to me because these people are disabled by their neurological condition, and so it's worth the risk of opening the skull and laying something on there.
Okay.
But for an average person, it just is not worth it. But I'll let you comment.
All right.
If there's one theme that I would hope that any reader that read the book carefully would come away with, it's that the realization of any of these dreams is always going to be an approximation. That's never one-to-one. The reason I chronicled such a variety of different dreams of the future going back to the late 1800s and going forward is that you can see that the visionaries, I'll give you a really good example, J.D. Bernal. J.D. Bernal, a total atheist, kind of Freudian, he dreamt up a world in which human beings would first sort of link their minds together through electrodes, and then the collectives themselves would become superhuman. And then because of that collective nature, the individual would enjoy a kind of immortality in the future. And his vision of this was, very clunky. It's kind of cyberpunk in retrospect. This is a book, The World, the Flesh, and the Devil, published in 1929. And in the end, he had this kind of religious vision of where everything would go. It would be like nirvana. And each individual brain, as it died, would just kind of dissolve into the collective brains. So none of that happened in a literal way. But going back to 1929, almost 100 years ago, you can see that, working with the tools he had at hand, he had a grand vision for humanity. And what we have right now in the internet is in many ways a much more elaborate, a much less pristine, but obviously correlated reality to his vision. And you see that all across science fiction. You see it all across futurism, that they never get it exactly right, but they get it right enough to change people's lives completely. So when you think about, for instance, I agree with you, Drew, that their dreams of being able to upload the entirety of the brain, that was Ray Kurzweil's big vision, to be able to emulate the brain in silico, that is probably outside the realm of anything we're going to see in our lifetime or any lifetimes on for centuries. But what the artificial intelligence enthusiasts say, and I do agree with them on this, is that to replicate cognition, you don't have to replicate the brain. In the same way that a bird's wing is far more complex than a plane's wing, true. And yet the plane's wing is very effective, or a knife to a claw. You can do the same tasks with a computer system that you can the brain. Now, it never lives up to the dream, just like the internet didn't live up to the dream of connecting all humans and dissolving all cultural boundaries. But what has happened is it has completely wrecked people's conception of reality. So at least we have that to console ourselves with.
We have that to be grateful for. But I want to switch over to Rebecca's situation again, which is that what you described, Joe, of this connectivity is actually how biological humans work. He's just describing something that we have learned really actually happens. And this idea of us dissolving into some whole is, I think, what you tap into sometimes. And so does that sound like, to me, it sounds very familiar, what that futurist was describing.
Well, when I tell Michelle, and she didn't want me to tell anybody, I said there has to be some kind of meaning of this, that we witnessed this, and that there has to be something more in the future about this. And that, somehow we both, me, her, and the car, moved at faster than light. You see what I mean? Because we had to go in there within a split second. We didn't feel going in there. We just went in there. So, there was some meaning to it. I don't know if it's come to pass yet as why it happened to me or us.
What about people's sort of collective experience dissolving into some whole? Is that phenomena in terms of how people experience afterlives or anything like that?
No, because what I've seen and witnessed, again, is heaven is a real dimension. It's not just a black hole. It's not just a nothingness. And it's very beautiful. It's like living color. So, and do I believe in Jesus because I went to Catholic school? No, I've actually seen Jesus 3 times. And as I think I've told Susan, I call him the hot Jew because he's so cute. Okay. So, for me, is it just somebody telling me something? No. And that's a long story of how I've seen him 3 times, but I have seen him 3 times. And he is really handsome. So I could tell you that he must have had a lot of fans. Yes.
Okay. Or they, I don't know. But what I think is this sort of consciousness that Joe's looking at is we're all intertwined with the internet. We're putting all our thoughts out into the universe, and then it's all going to be taken up into some place, sort of like a consciousness of our brains when we go to the afterlife. When somebody dies, like I feel like we're all connected somehow. But I kind of want to ask Rebecca if she has any predictions of what the future is going to be like because of AI and transhumanism, and how it's going to affect us, like as humans in the future. Is everything that Joe's writing in his book going to come true? Are we going to be, he has a lot of, things that he's said in his book that, is kind of scary, but I'm just curious if you have any insight into that.
Well, I'm feeling both. I'm feeling that's a plus and a negative. And in the way people use it is what's going to determine plus or negative. I know that's pretty common sense, but, if they find a chip that can cure somebody from being paralyzed, that's a plus. But if somebody uses it to, where nobody has a job, that's a negative. So that's how I
see that? Do you think that that's going to happen?
I don't actually see it as a negative. I see it as more as a positive. Okay. I think it'll come to a place where it'll be like amazing.
What about in like warlike situations? I mean, are we going to have robots used against us? Are we going to have, is there going to be an army of a swarm of, what were they? Nanobot, what are they? Nanobot drones but
actually, I hope I wanted Joe to comment on this. Elon Musk said that he imagines the robot market to be something like $400 trillion once it's in a very short order. And I don't know if you saw that comment. He just did the math. He goes, our robots are going to cost this. Here's what they're going to do. He goes, I just don't imagine any way this isn't a $400 trillion market. And he goes, and then what does money even mean? You said that. He was like, what would money mean at that point? Which I thought was a really interesting question. Do you see anything like that coming?
I see Elon Musk as a cyborg car dealer. And so, they run, but how long and how well? Look, Elon Musk especially is one. He's become in many ways the vocal. He's the spokesperson for the transhumanist, posthumanist movement, and he does produce technologies that are viable. I mean, Neuralink. If you see that guy Arnaud, I forget his first name, but the one Neuralink patient that's gotten so much coverage, he's playing Mario Kart with only his brain. And there are a lot of other people with implanted brain-computer interfaces that they can do a lot of stuff, but nothing that sophisticated. So he is actually doing things. The robot Optimus, it's okay. There's a lot of other humanoid competition. But the most important thing Elon Musk is doing is cultivating a worldview and an expectation for people to live into. And in the same way that futurists in the mid 1800s to the early 1900s to the mid 20th century, on to 5 minutes ago, the same way that all of these different visions of the world are competing for attention, and in the same way that the people trying to realize these visions of the world are competing to create viable technologies, he is casting a huge, huge net. And in his vision of the world, hundreds of millions or billions of people will have Neuralink implants in order to form hive minds to fight against the super intelligent AI that will inevitably be created. Is that actually going to be the future? I don't think so. But is our future going to be steered by such visions? 1,000%, I believe so.
How'd you get interested in this stuff?
I'm sorry?
How'd you get interested in this stuff?
I've always been really techno-negative ever since I was a kid. But I'd flip-flop. I've always been very fascinated by tools and computers and robots and especially just systems. But you can see the negative impacts over and over and over again. You see the way the negative impacts are oftentimes swept under the rug or ignored, and the positives are always emphasized in the wider culture. The dystopias are the kind of underbelly, right? It's the concentrated leftovers of all the hype and all the boosting. I don't think the dystopias are all that helpful either, but I do think that somewhere between that hype and the dystopia is the otherwise boring reality that we actually face every day, outside of course, war and love.
And to that point, when I listened to your book, and I'm sorry, I listened to the audiobook, we were driving for quite a little while, and I'm sure if I could have focused and just sat and read it, I would have pulled even more out. But the one thing that jumped out at me listening to it in a long form like that is that the boring part that you're talking about, to me, was just the human part. I mean, whether it's Jules Verne or the Pharaohs, it's all the same brain with the same ideas, with the same phenomenon in more sophisticated technologies, with the similar downsides. And just, I mean, the upsides, I guess humans get more out of it, but they also get, whether it's social media, which certainly has some powerful benefits, and we have the mental health consequences on teenage girls. I mean, there's always these downsides, but it's the same brain doing the same kind of thing. When I listened to you, like I said, to me, the greatest example was what you said about the pharaohs 5,000 years ago and the tech giants now. Same behavior, human beings doing the same thing in a much different way.
Yeah, just to stick on that for just 1 second, the pharaohs, as much as foolish as their quest was for immortality, one assumes, unless they're still hovering there in the astral plane. Then
they're still with us.
Okay, then let's assume they are. But this world, speaking of this world, Egypt, ancient Egypt is all gone. The priests have almost no power whatsoever outside of their descendants in the occult. So, but the pyramids remain. Egypt remains as a foundation for our current Western civilization and civilizations moving out to the east. The impact was very real and it resonated. So even if there's not, even if you don't go into the Great Pyramid and there's some kind of Stargate where Ra, gives directives for what humanity is to do in the future, you still have this resonance, this very, very deep resonance. And so on the one hand, it is a fool's errand, this kind of, ascension to godhood by the mortal. On the other hand, they did in many ways achieve godlike power. And so I think that it's you have to take very seriously that the wealthiest men on earth, with the assistance of the most powerful governments and militaries on earth, are dreaming these dreams and willing to kind of force them onto the rest of us. And even if it isn't as
I
pristine
gotta
as
just-
theirs, it's happening in that sense, in an approximation.
I get what you're saying. This is what I really liked about your book and the way you think, which is they didn't get immortality in the way they wanted it or imagined it, and yet their impact was in fact immortal. And this is what the human brain seems to do. We want it the way we want it, and we work hard for it, and it has huge implications, but it's not exactly the way we imagined it necessarily. Jules Verne, we did not go to the moon the way he imagined it, but we went. And so that's sort of what I'm saying. Rebecca, you have anything to follow on?
Well, it's such a complicated situation, really. But I think that God's not a foolish God if you believe in God. I don't think you'll see the face of God, but the energy of God. And that I think that we're, even as humans, without all this other AI or anything else, are very capable of creating like unimaginable things right now. Remember how I talked about flying cars and you kind of laughed at me?
No, I said when.
Yeah.
when can I get one?
Yeah, when? And they came to pass. And not that we're using them right now.
But this is another example. I don't know why I'm so kind of intrigued by this, but we imagined a Buick with wings with behind the steering wheel with an accelerator. When we didn't think of drones, we didn't know about multiple. And if we had really thought about things more broadly and not so the way we wanted it, we would have gotten there quicker.
Yeah. So I think that we're going to continue to progress, hopefully without repeating the mistakes of war. But I don't think so.
Yeah. We will make that mistake.
Well, I know people are kind of afraid about something with China right now, but I don't think so.
Good, like that.
Yeah. So
Need some good news.
We're not on the verge of World War III.
No.
I think I'll let her answer that after the break because we're going to bring somebody else on right after the break, and then
Does Joe go now, or is he?
no,
with
he's
us
going to
still?
stay just for a quickie with the next guest, and be right back.
Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I want to introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsidin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects. No chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsidin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes capsidin so unique. In clinical trials, capsidin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using Capsidin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsidin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsidin.com/DREW. Many of us have not gotten over COVID. I'm not talking about the virus itself, but the response. We were flabbergasted by what the government could do to us. There is no telling what they might pull next time, and it's looking more like there will be a next time. So we all have to be what I call rationally ready. That's where the wellness company comes in. TWC is about access to physicians via telehealth, access to potentially life-saving medication. Years ago, having access to medication and telehealth might have seemed crazy, but now it seems crazy not to. Now, with claims that gain-of-function research have been done on the bird flu, I urge everyone to take control of their healthcare with the help of the wellness company. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all their products, including the 4 medical kits, each of which has a different purpose. And we've added Tamiflu to one of them in case the bird flu does become a problem for humans. Be rationally ready. drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off.
I'm rationally ready, but we're here with the author of Dark Aeon. I was calling it Eon, but it's Aeon. And we'll be back in a second. But first, thank you to all our sponsors. We appreciate those who keep these shows going, even though a lot of people think that my show's crazy. But anyways, I really love this discussion. But before we do, since we're talking about the future and potentially, having another pandemic or more emergencies or a world war or something, if you're traveling, the wellness company has this great thing called the travel emergency kit. You need to pop in your car and start driving for the hills and run from humanity.
Well.
You will have your antibiotics close by.
Okay, let's bring it back down to earth here a little bit. So here's the travel kit. We took this with us. We were traveling this week. Brought it with us. I helped design this kit. It's everything I give my patients. I want you to pay attention to the emergency kit. We have a EpiPen in there that is priced better than almost any EpiPen you can get anywhere. We were very careful to source these things in a cost-efficient way. We want you to be able to get access to these things. We don't make them cost-prohibitive. But this EpiPen thing is a great breakthrough. And so if you need those EpiPens, if you have bee sting allergies or medication allergies where you have to carry EpiPen around, this is a great way to get a complete emergency kit with an EpiPen at a great price.
drdrew.com/TWC.
And then also two other things that were not in the commercials, but my friends at True Niagen, I take Niagen every day.
That's the ad at the end of the show. But first we're going to talk about Capsidin, because I gave this to Rebecca before she left for Europe, and she has some knee problems, and she just wants to tell us what she found.
Well, this was like a lifesaver, going to Europe and walking like millions of miles. And but I kind of worked it for a lot of things, a bit of pain, some swelling in my knees and my feet, and it didn't it's not burning.
Right.
It doesn't burn.
That's the big thing.
And it was easy to carry around. It's very light.
Yeah.
And it was really like
I'll
a
give
lifesaver.
you some more before you leave today.
Yes, I want some more. I used it all.
Okay, good.
It's amazing.
I know she got here and said, "Where's that cream that I think Kaleb gave me that cream? Where's more of that stuff?"
Oh, God.
that's Capsidin.
I was so sad when
Great.
I used it all.
Okay,
And
good.
It was
good.
great.
Well, anyways, those are a couple of our great sponsors. Anyways, back with Joe. We're going to also bring in our other guest, to another calling out guest, Brian O'Shea. He's got a vast knowledge of global intelligence, hosts the podcast Investigate Everything with Brian O'Shea, and he's part of the Daily Clout Substack. He has served in the military for 11 years, and he's sort of our on-call intelligence expert, and he's also married to our friend Naomi Wolf, and he scares the shit out of us on a regular basis on this show because he knows the inside scoop on international politics, affairs, and war. So welcome, Brian. And also I want to have Joe up on the screen to say hello, because I know you guys are friends.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I was going to say, if I scare you, why'd you have me and Joe on at the same time? Because you must be really scared now.
Oh, I am just so into this stuff. And you know that I call you every time I see something in the news and I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? But can we bring Joe up too, Kaleb? Is that a possibility? Hi.
Going on, brother.
So,
Hey, what's
Yeah.
going on?
I knew
time
you were
saw
going to be
Joe-
here, and it wasn't just psychic.
Yeah. Last time I saw Joe, we were in D.C. at an Irish bar way too late.
It happens. It happens.
So, do you have anything to interject here with Joe, Brian, or Drew,
Well, with
for that matter?
with the entire conversation, I mean, that was a lot. When I hear a lot of the metaphysical or esoteric, and then I hear a lot of the technical, and I always think they're on a crash course to an intersection. So a lot of the things I've seen in my lifetime that were science fiction or metaphysical back in the 80s, they become reality today. The scary part about not seeing the China threat in both of these worlds is that they're diving into both with so much money and so much research that I would recommend that people rethink that. And, a lot of people, it's hard if you don't know a lot about what's going on in China now, and it's hard to know a lot about what's going on in China now. But I would refer people to a book by my friend Brandon Weichart called Biohacked, where it's China's race to control life, and it kind of lays over both of these topics really, really brilliantly and well researched. So my thing is, as as these things may seem over the horizon and may seem a bit out of touch, I think what Joe's book did brilliantly, it lays out that it's happening now and it's been happening now. And it's just kind of a slow boil. It's filtering in. And it's not all bad. I'm certainly not a Luddite. But I would say that like anything, it's like a gun. If it's in the wrong hands, it's a dangerous weapon.
You know what? I totally agree. And I think that China's technology is way ahead of what we know. We don't know everything that they're up to. I don't trust them. I never have. And, maybe we're not going to go into war with them. And that's what I asked Rebecca. But the technology, I had a videotape of some robots fighting with play, on Instagram. It just came up. I guess somehow it's in my algorithm now, but I don't know if Kaleb cued that, but I just find that China is really ahead of the game, and they're building these robots, and they're creating this this world of futuristic war games. I mean, Brian and I have talked about this. I mean, they get into us. We're in a war with China right now. It's asymmetrical. They've gotten into our mind. You saw the pandemic. They were able to shut down the world, and now they're building. Their technology is just really probably far superior to ours at this point. So, that's what I got from the book. But no, and I just think that I'm worried for my grandchildren, and what they're going to be dealing with in the future, and how we're all going to be under the rule of some kind of a computer god, and our jobs will be obsolete, and we'll all live in unless we all move to a farm and start growing our own food and get rid of our iPhones, we're all going to hell.
Yeah, and
Go
ahead, Joe.
A lot of the drive to create all of this is riding on the back of the idea that China will get there before us. So why do we need to have fully lethal autonomous weapons that can kill without a human being in the loop? Well, the argument is if we don't, then China will. And if China does, their weapons will be superior. The drive for artificial general intelligence, or the drive for artificial superintelligence, all of that, it is kind of endemic to the project of artificial intelligence here. But the desperate drive, a lot of the argument for why we need the federal government to be involved, why we need the military to be involved, and why artificial general intelligence needs to be looked at as a kind of new nuclear weapon, it's all on the basis that if we don't create it and use it to create a society that's more potent and powerful and better organized than China, they will. They'll take over the world and will be ruled by their supercomputer god instead of ours. What's interesting about it, though, China really isn't, like Brian O'Shea said, it's very difficult to really know what's going on inside China, inside their borders. But so far as we do know, just seeing the results of their artificial intelligence systems, just seeing the results of the medicines, like genetic-based medicines, they aren't ahead of us. They're not even remotely close, especially in artificial intelligence. So it's interesting. I do think China is a threat. I do think that it would be, I guess, if we're going to live under a supercomputer god, it would be better ours than theirs. But ultimately, it's, I would say, a rhetorical ploy. It's a way of getting people on board with things that they otherwise wouldn't necessarily want to do. And it's getting people on board with a vision of the future that otherwise people would be terrified by. But if the idea is, if we don't do it, China will.
Yeah. And I wanted to jump in and add to that. It's also based on, what Joe's saying is based on a traditional war type of concept of fire, return fire, launch. And when I look at the threat, I don't look at it as if they're going to get this thing and launch it. I look at it as they've been at war with us and they're filtering things in, and they're conducting something called unrestricted warfare on us now. And some of that involves elite capture, regulatory warfare, the things that filter in, the way of capturing us and destroying us without firing a shot is the goal. And so it does scare me when I hear our own people saying, hey, we need to have this, otherwise China will get us, when those very same people might be working for China. And so that's the part that scares me the most about the China threat. Is not so much it's an arms race. I think we're infected by our enemy right now through the corruption of our own leaders, and a lot right down to the county level. So the answer I think for AI is it's going to run, it's going to grow, and just really just keeping an eye on it, because look at the current government. These are the last people I would trust with even a pea shooter, let alone AI. So and I do agree with Joe. I do think they're behind us, but at the same time, if we allow our government to regulate anything, there's a good chance that they're going to be selling that more advanced technology right back to China. China didn't advance in their technology because they let their brilliant minds run free. They stole a lot of it. And with the fact that they've done so much regulatory capture and elite capture of our own elites, I say keep the government out of it, and just keep an eye on it.
Doesn't it sound familiar?
That means I don't have a good
Wait,
answer.
yeah, I was just thinking about what they were talking about last night. Tell them what we were at an
we
event.
had friends that were invited us to a dinner for the Institute of World Politics, IWP. Do you familiar with that school? And they were some of the faculty speaking, and they sounded like Brian O'Shea. A lot of the same ideas about infection and infected by our enemies, so to speak, and that's had a profound effect on us.
That's what it feels like. I mean, it's just everywhere you go. It's like, oh my! We used to play. Joe, you might remember this one. It was like 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon. Now we can play 3 degrees to the CCP. So it's a dark time.
Sure.
Sorry, I laughed.
I think what bothers me the most about the Chinese threat in many ways is it's the possibility that in order to keep up with them, that we will become more like them. The technologies can be used in many different ways, but you take Eric Schmidt, for instance. Eric Schmidt is, in general, confrontational towards China. Google tried to court China, but has largely been in competition with China since getting booted. And so Eric Schmidt's argument in the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence was published in 2021. And his argument and that of his fellow researchers was that the United States, in order to maintain parity with China, or our edge on China, that we would have to, for instance, use the same sorts of surveillance techniques, but do it in an American style, so that people would have the promise of data privacy and data ownership, and that the government wouldn't actually suppress human beings like they do in China, but it would be used for the betterment and the efficiency of the society. We all see what happens with Google. We all see what happens with all these tech companies. They all make these promises of interconnection, of better health, better healing, of greater knowledge about the world, and even all the way to actual self-realization, fulfillment. And in the end, what happens, they are the wealthiest people on earth. They exert enormous control over our lives, either directly or more frequently psychologically, and they monitor everything that we do that they can get their hands on. Yeah, I'm actually very concerned that not only actually that we will be more like China in our race to beat them, but we'll actually be far more powerful than China, but it will be somewhat similar in its outcome, a kind of hellish top-down and at the bottom down here, collectivist sort of society. But not ever in the way that the science fiction writers say. If you look at, like, for instance, Blade Runner is supposed to be hellish, but it looks pretty cool. Instead, we don't get Blade Runner where it looks pretty cool, as nasty as it is. We get, dum-dums in masks and, really badly rendered avatars for social media.
Yeah, we get metaverse, soda, sopa, and masks.
Yeah.
we get the part. Just look. You want to talk to futurists? I'm sorry, Brian and Joe, but I think Matt and Trey from South Park pretty much. If you want it 3 years out anyway, they pretty much get it.
Yes.
Well, Rebecca, do you have anything you want to say about this whole conversation before I sign Joe off? He's been amazing, by the way.
I do believe that, China has, some hand in what they were talking about. But do I think they're an immediate threat? Some people have said that they're going to come in and, something in September. And that, we have to run off to like Mongolia.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe California is going to get bombed or something. Or we're just,
yeah. No, I don't think so. I mean, we have more threat, which we know from Hamas. Is that how you pronounce
Yes.
it? Then we know that. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
of
not
course.
too.
Terroristic problem.
I mean, I want to be aware, but I'm not going to be paranoid.
You're not? Okay. Well, that's a good sign. So,
I should-
anyways,
I should
I'm
just
going to let.
add that. No, go ahead.
No, please.
Hello.
Right, have at it.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I was getting some bleed over. So what I was saying is, I would, on that you said Hamas, and I'm certainly not debating, but I will say there's clear evidence that China has ultimately funded Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, China. So the bomb doesn't have to have Chinese writing on it. I'm less worried about a bomb because I think they want our land. But I would say that I'm not waiting for a big hit from China. I think it's been happening since 2003.
Behind the scenes, they're sneaky.
Yeah.
That's how they do it. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of people when they businesses they invest in both candidates. You know what I mean? If it's like they're putting bets down just in case. Why not? Let's bet a little bit on Hamas, a little bit over here, just spreading their risk and their bets around. I'm not surprised. Anyway, finish
I think
up.
about what that guy said. Like, we were at this military school type,
Institute of World Politics.
Institute of World Politics meeting last night, and they were talking about how China's on the border of India throwing rocks at the Indian people. I mean, they're just out there. They're out there. Their military is out there, and they're on the borders, and they're not to be trusted in anything, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not psychic. That's.
Unless they're doing synchronized
Swimming.
artistic swimming with women. Then they seem to have it pretty much wired.
Yeah, they're fine. We don't know. They might be spies too. In those bathing suits, they're very, But anyways, the book is Dark Aeon. We really appreciate your time, Joe. It's been such a pleasure, and I got all the way through it, believe it or not. So, everybody go out and get this book. It's amazing. It's good reading, and it made Drew think. So,
I loved it.
but I appreciate your time,
It's a great
Really
book.
appreciate that, and
we have 2 copies at our home.
I want
No, great
to
to see
just say, Susan, that you're talking about before about my life for the last year has been a bizarre twilight zone between aeon and eon. Everyone asking me how to pronounce it. Truth is, not unlike Everett's wave theorem, it's both a particle and a wave. It's both aeon as in the Gnostic entity, and it's eon as in period of time. So it really is dealer's choice. And I just in closing, we were talking about the woo-woo. And I know I must come off like some sort of hyper-rationalist, but I will say that insofar as the human mind and the human consciousness, I think that, we're all somewhere between the woo and the goo.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. Okay, well, hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. And, if anything comes true, I definitely want to have you back on the show so you can see, I told you.
We're a year
When the
out, and
drone
I've already got a
swarms hit.
couple. But namaste.
Oh, wow. Namaste.
And then Brian's staying?
Yeah, so Brian, I want to explain this to Brian. I did a show a couple weeks ago with Dr. Kelly Victory. Okay, it was right after the Trump assassination attempt. And this show, I like to talk to psychics about things that we can't see in normal everyday life. We don't get the information from the news. We're not investigative reporters like you, where you know all the details of the backstories of what's going on in the world. So I bring like psychics on, and they sort of give their predictions of what was going on. And I had this new psychic who I have never used before, Andrew Anderson, and I'm going to bring him on now. He's one of the top psychics in Chicago, and he was on with Kelly Victory. He was able to get about 2 words in edgewise. I didn't let him go first, and then he was just agreeing with everything she said, because she was she was spot on with her stuff, because she's an expert in this stuff. So I want to bring him back and tell everybody that I'm really, really excited to have him on my calling out team. Maybe Kaleb can bring him.
Do you want me to play the video clip, Susan? Do you want to play the video from the July show first?
So yeah, let's get him on the screen first, just so I can introduce him. He's available. Scroll up, Robin. He's. Oh, there you are. Hi, Andrew. Welcome to Calling Out with Susan Pinsky.
See you.
We got to make sure. Hello.
See ya.
We can see you, but we cannot hear you.
He's there.
Can't hear me?
Oh, there we go. Okay. So Andrew, I really just wanted to bring you back on, because I feel like usually what I like to do is have the psychic do their psychic intuition readings first, and let the guest or whoever's getting a reading answer afterwards. And unfortunately, you didn't really get a chance to finish your thought before Kelly took over. But I love Kelly, and she really was very sort of intellectually intuitive into what went on, and you agreed with her. We have a little clip that we want to play of something that you said before this news came out.
There's definitely the CIA knew this. There's no way that they didn't have something to do with this, in my opinion.
So that's who you think was up on the water tower, and because they were pretty much able to get out fast if they were there.
This was obviously a confused boy. I felt like he was bullied at some point, confused about his identity. I felt an evil attachment to him, an evil entity of some sort, kind of a friend of sorts, his imaginary friend, he called him. But it feels like it was something very evil that infiltrated him. And I see this a lot with mass murderers and mass shootings. A lot of them say they have voices. Maybe that's psychological, but I know that it's something else. Those evil and negative entities can attach to people and create things like this to get them to convince them that this is what they're supposed to be doing.
So he predicted that the Secret Service also knew that this guy was a person of interest before, he was able to jump up there on the roof and take aim at Donald Trump. So, but that was like a few weeks ago. So anyways, Brian probably knows that the same type of thing. I don't know, Brian, what do you think about this kind of
I want to
prediction?
clarify something really quick, Susan.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to...
Oh, you know what? I'm going to let you talk, because I screwed up last time. So.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. I just want to clarify one thing that I believe. There's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there. I don't buy into all of them. I do know that there's a lot more going on than people know. And I also believe that we heard of shadow governments, our shadow government before. I believe there's a shadow CIA within the CIA, a cell of bad players who knew this. And up to months before is what I'm seeing. And I wrote some downloads that I got today based on this. One thing I said, if the CIA actually wanted someone dead, they'd be dead. And he's still here. So I don't think the CIA took the shot at him. I believe this kid did. He just missed. So I feel they overlooked crooks as a threat on purpose. I also feel there's some things missing. So there was another device, a cell phone or a laptop, that either wasn't presented to us, the public, or it was actually hidden or concealed. I think that the right information about what happened is on there. Whether or not it comes out, that remains to be seen, of course. But there's so much more to this story than what we've been told, or I'm not even really following it on the news, to be honest. I work too much, so I'm just going off psychically what I'm feeling. And that is that this guy, he was a prospect in their eyes, meaning like they knew this months ago that there was some kid wanting or planning or having something to do with like a shooting, and they let it happen. And that's why he was ignored. They saw him while he was even on the roof. They didn't take action until the shot was actually fired, in my belief. I do see that there's one thing I see is that whatever we've seen on his laptop or phone or whatever they said it was a ruse. I don't feel he was a Republican. I believe they said he was registered with the Republican Party. I think that was done on purpose to throw people off. I think the true nature of what he did is on whatever device I'm sensing is out there. That either they didn't. I don't know if they found it or not, but I know it exists. So.
Right, Brian. When you hear this type of how does this apply to your world?
Well, there's a lot baked in there. So let me go one by one. I always say I don't know what I don't know, and so I go with the evidence. I will make the comment that I've made many times, and I have no reason to doubt your feelings about the CIA, for instance, but from my optic and my experience, it seems more likely that the FBI is all over this. And the reason I say that is because the CIA pretty much has very little experience operating domestically. The CIA also can't confirm or deny if the FBI starts a whisper campaign saying they were involved. I've seen this many times. To me, this operation looks very much like the Gretchen Whitmer operation, where they had that failed kidnapping and they all turned out to be FBI confidential informants. That said, very few people know what is ever going on at the CIA, not even the other intelligence agencies. So, I can't say anyone's wrong or right because we just don't know. And actually, with your abilities, you might be able to overcome a lot of the classification barriers that others cannot. But I will say, when I look at the evidence of this, it does seem like a classic, a hit on a political opponent. And as Jill Biden was the one that put, what's her name, Cheadle in charge, we got her the job. And there were questions about a signal communication going to the White House. The Occam's razor is telling me, look at the Bidens in response to this hit. And, the president, as senile as he is, that office has a lot of power. If he says go, people go. And a lot of times it just happens automatically. There's not a lot of thought to it. With the question, what you said about the shadow CIA, yes, but I want to lay out what that architecture looks like. It's not so much a shadow CIA, like the CIA within the CIA. They do have divisions that don't know what the other divisions do. Like there's SAD, there's CTC, there's IOC. Those are very siloed. What happens, though, is a lot of people spend careers in the CIA. Then they get out and they form private intelligence firms that operate just like the CIA, are highly connected, and a lot of times have access to better technology and retain a lot of their human intelligence network that was recruited with taxpayer dollars at the CIA. So when I hear like shadow CIA, I think more of it as parallel CIA, and that would be the private sector CIA, Chertoff Group, Ridge Consulting, those type of operations, and they're all over Washington D.C. and they don't do government work because they're private, because they get paid so much more by domestic and international organizations. So a lot of times I've seen things that people are like, that's just like the CIA would do it. I'm like, it is. But if you spend your career there, you're well connected, and you bankroll your own firm, of course you're going to act just like the CIA, because their technology at the CIA kind of Well, it's a little bit behind. They have to outsource most of their stuff.
Yeah, I believe the FBI is absolutely involved too. There's more to this story, as you know, we all know. It's not just what it appears to be. The way I phrase it, I know there's just some bad players in probably all facets of government. And yeah, I did say, and I suggested it went to the top. So in what you said about the Bidens, I don't think there's a coincidence that he had that post that said, let's put Trump in the bullseye. And when was that? I don't even remember. I think I saw that. Isn't that accurate that there was that post from him?
Mm-hmm.
That Biden said that?
There was.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden,
she did hire.
No coincidences in my world. And she did what?
She did hire Cheadles, and was her name Cheadles? Cheadle?
Yeah,
and she was,
Cheadle.
She was in charge, and she also didn't send enough Secret Servicemen that day too. So that. I mean, it's funny you say that.
They actually strategic. If I may, Susan, sorry to cut you off. So it seems like both her and Kamala strategically drained the resources of the Secret Service because they were both in Pennsylvania on that day.
Huh.
Which there's only so many Secret Service people to go around in those field offices. So, and if those because there was a pecking order, and a lot of people get mad at this, but I've had to explain to people, look, you might not like Jill Biden. We all find her annoying. I call her the blonde Alice Cooper. But the point is, they get priority over a candidate, even a former presidential candidate. So that seems very strategic. I mean, as an investigator, when I backtrack and I look at it, I do think to myself, like, okay, everything here, if this were any other time in our lives, this would be almost open and shut. I mean, there is a preponderance of evidence to suggest a conspiracy to assassinate Donald Trump by certain people. That aside, what I'm curious about and what I really wanted to ask you about today was, Mr. Anderson, I'm really, really having trouble finding the very existence of crooks. And not just because they scrubbed the internet, but the powers that be have also largely, memory hold a guy named Maxwell Urich, who seems to fit the bill perfectly. Now, have you heard this name before?
I have not.
Yes?
I've not heard of Maxwell Urich.
Okay. Maxwell Urich, and I'll try to, I have some visuals, but so on Saturday, after like late night after the attempted assassination, there were lots of suspects running around the internet. First, there was this fat Italian guy, turned out to be a blogger, and he was making a funny video saying, "Oh my gosh, I pinched my cheek, I'm still alive." So it wasn't him. And then Maxwell Urich pops up. This guy looks just like that corpse you saw on the ceiling, on the roof. And he's also been arrested for starting violence and attacking police at Trump events multiple times. And he lives in Pittsburgh. And his parents are involved with the gunsmithing, everything like that. So it just disappeared. Now, when I look at the pictures of, Thomas Matthew Crooks, I gotta wonder, like, why do we only have a couple things? Like, why do we only have like 2 or 3 pictures? We have a DMV photo, and we have a kind of grainy still from a graduation video, and you could count, I guess, the BlackRock commercial that they said he appeared in. But did his parents not have any pictures of him growing up? There's nothing. And not only that, the final thing I'll say is, you have a guy who supposedly borrowed an assault rifle from his father to take a shot at a former president and presidential candidate. Where was the raid? Why didn't they raid that house? They went to that house, the FBI did, with dressed like I am with some clipboards. There was no raid, there was no securing the house, nothing. I mean, that would be the first thing that would happen. And so the more I look at Thomas Matthew Crooks, he seems to just appear. There are footprints that I can look at where I know where to look. It's no special knowledge or anything. It's just years of experience doing background checks. and there's kind of like he doesn't exist. And I'm not just talking before he was 18, where there's not going to be much of a footprint, but we're talking like he doesn't seem to exist at all, almost like he was made up. And I will say this:
FBI agent.
He's a shadow, period. And so with you do, I'd be curious to know your thoughts on, does this guy even exist, or is the actual shooter this, Maxwell Urich?
Very interesting. I didn't look at it like that. I do feel he exists. My feeling. Whenever something doesn't make sense, there's no such thing as coincidence in my world. So, especially when it comes to politics and the government. So, I can't say no to what you're saying, though. I'm going to do some more research on that guy, Max Urich.
So, Rebecca, do you have any insight into that? You have to lean into the mic.
It seems so odd how they knew he was up there and they didn't act on it. And then, the one man got shot. That's sad. I just think there's got to be something behind them not acting on it. Why wouldn't they act on it? I mean, what kind of...
There's an answer for that.
What is that?
So a rather credible, though not excusing answer I've heard for that is, so apparently there was no communications with the local police. That's really not on the local police. That's on the Secret Service. They have jurisdiction. They're in charge. It's up to them to make sure the communications work and that it's a good structure. Apparently, what I've heard this on the Dan Bongino show, and look, he's the best source, I think, of anyone out there right now who's speaking to the public, because he was in the Secret Service. And what he had said was there were supposed to be people on the roof, but there were no communications. So when you have those shooters, those counter sniper teams, apparently what they were doing, and this coming from a tactical world myself, this makes sense. They were trying to figure out, is that one of our own? Or is that, he's shooting. Okay, it's not one of our own. And that's what the hesitation was, according to sources that Dan Bongino has.
Yeah, but figuring out why this guy doesn't have, everything's erased. Like, he's a young 20-year-old and there's nothing on him. That's why I think there's something behind it. Like, there's somebody who set him up, made sure that we couldn't figure out who he was, where he came from, couldn't find his Instagram post, like whatever he was doing. I mean, they said he looked at porn or something before the shooting, like shocking. But just, like, how do you, there has to be somebody higher up, because you can't just erase your whole life on your social media, your phones, your family, your friends, everything. It just, that's just, it has to be done by specialists or people that can, clear your name or make you a shadow.
Well, I wanted to find out, where's this body? Where's the funeral? Has anybody witnessed his dead body?
Exactly, right? Where's the mourning of the father? He doesn't seem like a guy in mourning. And I don't want to second guess anyone's emotions.
Brian said that before. It's funny you say that, Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's a great point. Like, where's the obituary?
Right. Where's the obituary? Where's the body? Where's the funeral? Where's the grieving? I mean, come on, that doesn't make sense, especially and if that is that his only child? No,
there's, from what I found, I think there's like 4 of them.
Oh, wow.
And they're all crooks.
Well, what about the other kids? What do they say? They're all crooks.
Yeah, what an name to have, right?
Someone had to go there.
My God.
I'm sorry.
It was good. You beat me to it. So good.
I love that the Secret Service is Cheadle and then it's Crooks. Like, I always thought that was it's funny how their names. Self-fulfilling prophecy there. No, but Drew, do you want to?
No, I got nothing. But I'm just saying we're in the simulation. It's just the simulation winking at us. That's all.
No, I mean, listen, we know that somebody put him up to it somehow. That he didn't act alone. I feel like I mean, just as common sense just makes me feel like that. And I'm glad that you guys agree. And
there's proof of that. There's another device that exists. I feel it so strongly. that has all the answers.
Did you say device?
Yeah, some laptop, some cell
like a
phone, something
phone.
that has.
The drone. It's
yeah.
the drone.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. What about that drone that he supposedly flew over the area for all that time before? No one's mentioned where is that drone and where's the footage from that? It's a good point.
So, and I'm glad you felt that, because that, and by the way, I have the highest respect for what you do. And, I'm always open to it. And the fact that you said that, like, you may have been picking up what I was feeling. It's so frustrating. Like, I fly these drones, and when you fly them, your interface is your phone, right? Or a phone. You do not need to be on cellular to use them. I don't really understand how that works, but I've flown drones in airplane mode on my phone. And everything you do goes and it gets saved on the phone, on the app, okay? And they said, oh, well, he wasn't recording. Okay, that's fine. Maybe he didn't record. He was just live streaming. Literally no one does that, but like sometimes they forget to hit record, which stinks. But what is recorded, and I had this on a tweet in animation from my own, is there's a flight path, there's weather conditions, there's every other place you flew that drone. Even if you register under a phony name, there is a registration. And since 2023, there's an FAA ID that's required for any drone over half a pound. And so everyone keeps brushing over the drone like it's no big deal. That is
Brian,
the key. And
I agree with you. My thing is, where are the press conferences? A former president was nearly shot. You would think there would be press conferences initially daily and then maybe weekly after that. We have had, to my knowledge, none. I'm not aware of a single press conference to update the American public on what we're paying these intelligence people for, to update us on what's going on. Is that inappropriate to expect that?
Maybe it's because their narrative that they came up with didn't apply anymore. They had it all planned out, maybe, that they were going to say that he was killed. And this was their narrative that they were going to follow. They had to regroup. He wasn't killed, obviously, and they just need time. They weren't ready for it.
well, it's just bad. And I agree with you. That's a good point, Mr. Anderson. Do you mind if I call you Andrew?
No, call me Andrew, please.
Because every time I call you Mr. Anderson, I'm thinking of Joe and I'm thinking of the Matrix. So
I love the Matrix.
No, but and that's a really good point, Dr. Drew. The last update that I saw on the Secret Service webpage, I think, was like July 15th or 16th. Okay, I saw more headlines on the terror threat at the Taylor Swift concert in Europe than I did, on legacy media when this happened. So they are trying to memory hole it big time. And I agree with Andrew that I think their stories are all screwed up. I do have the original audio cause I just started. So what I do, I just start recording my screen when things like this happen. So everything I'm researching is captured. And the thing I heard when the Secret Service swarmed, Donald Trump to shield him, you hear one of the female agents say, "What are we doing? What are we doing?"
Didn't she say, "Where are we?" Or what's next? She said, like, "Where are we?" I think, like, what's happening?
Where are we? What are we doing? Like, that's a drill. That's like a basic drill that like Secret Service knows how to. No one Can
I break in a minute?
I think you're right.
Has anybody heard from the coroner who should have looked at the body? I mean, in every crime or anything, where's he?
Medical examiner.
Yeah, the medical examiner. Has anybody mentioned him?
No, I haven't seen anything like it. I've
looked.
looked.
You guys have.
No, nothing.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
I have a question for Brian. Brian, so you're like, it's Kaleb. So you're familiar with how all of this stuff works, and wouldn't keeping this a secret be such a valuable secret that someone would spill it by now? Like, wouldn't someone go out and get a book deal and say, look, I can expose all it? Like, it takes such a hierarchy of so many people to be a part of it and to plan it out and to make it happen this way that it just seems to me that someone would leak it. Like, you can't keep that secret for too long, especially right now. This would be the time to say it, right?
I agree. I mean, I think people are leaking it. And probably the juicy leaks are not getting the media attention because look at the state of the media.
Right.
It's kind of like many people would say to me, oh, if only Donald Trump had done better on the environment or worked with, this group or that group. And I said, well, he did. It just didn't get any coverage. So, but what's also happened politically is, as everyone can see, the Secret Service, yes, it's their responsibility, but even the FBI has turned on them. And the Secret Service does not have a very robust lobbying capability in DC. So, yeah, I think people will eventually come forward, but I don't think they're going to come forward until this administration's out, because would you? I'd be terrified
Right.
to. And so I think if there are those whistleblowers, they're going to wait until Donald Trump's in office, because I consider myself a pretty emotionally callous and kind of cavalier guy. But even, if they're shooting at people or spinning up wayward teens to take shots at people,
Right.
It's certainly not, I wouldn't raise my voice, but you are right. That's normally what would happen. I think we're going to see that happen. It might just take a while.
So I'm thinking historically, it's like how often has this happened to a presidential candidate who's not currently the person that's in power? So of course their opponent is going to want to bury this story as much as they can, because you saw how much Trump's favorability soared after that event. So they don't want this to be the story. They want this to disappear as quickly as possible. Whereas if he was president right now, then he would have the power to make it the big story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
that
I'd
makes
say
sense.
one more thing on that. Go ahead. I would say one more thing on that is look at the timing of everything around the assassination attempt. You had the debate a week or two before that, okay? And then all of a sudden, like, no one's forcing Biden out after that debate. No one's forcing him out. But then all of a sudden you have the assassination attempt and boom, he's out. Just like that.
He's out.
And
Jill was on a plane to Paris.
to me, that tells me, like, okay, they want someone, a lot of people know, and they want to, and that's why I think the Bidens are kind of really, for me, they're the number one suspects, because all of a sudden, as soon as this happens, the powers that be are like, you're out, and that would be the Obama camp. They want that as far from them as possible. Okay, as far from them as possible. Just like if your buddy came to you and said, hey man, I kind of screwed up, I got really drunk and I ran over 5 kids. You'd be like, well, you can't stay here, and that's to me what it looks like.
It's something Andrew said. And did you want to say something, Andrew, before I change the subject?
Go ahead.
Oh, he said it was the CIA, shadow CIA, and you said that's international.
That I said that.
And then FBI is like, I wouldn't know the difference what the FBI or the CIA does. That's just sort of me. But if it was international, could China also be behind there?
Well, you know me, I think China's behind everything ultimately.
Yes.
So
I have something to add about China. I heard you guys talking about China. I just, for another show maybe. But one thing that I see psychically that I've been seeing for many years, over a decade, about China, not to change the topic really quick, I just want to say one thing, what I felt. There's actually Chinese nationalists coming across our border for many years, maybe decades. There's actually cells in this country of Chinese soldiers that we know nothing about. They're under the guise of just who knows what, but they're waiting for any time.
Comedians.
They're building an army from within.
She's hiding in plain sight. Zhao Ying is
they're building an army.
I'm
here.
convinced. Sorry,
he's right.
Andrew, I couldn't resist. Keep going.
He's right. Go ahead.
Oh, me? Yeah, I was just saying that's something I picked up on for a long time, that we were going to go to war with China someday. I said that 10 years ago, but hopefully it doesn't happen. But yeah, they're not stupid. This has been going on for years, and planning and plotting and covering their butt. There are people here that are willing and able to attack at any time from within. And if we continue to let our borders go the way they are, you're going to see thousands of millions, maybe even millions more coming across.
It's a great point. And, they actually have something called Operation Fox Hunt. And I love bringing this up, and especially when the left says, oh, that's conspiracy theory, because if you Google Operation Fox Hunt and Obama, there you got Obama in 2014 saying to Xi Jinping, "Hey, you gotta stop doing this Operation Foxhound. It's not really good. Stop it now." He's like, "Yeah, okay, we'll stop." And of course, they were arresting these guys right up until 2020. And what it is it's this overreach where the Chinese government is pulling, like that movie Munich, where they're going into other countries and grabbing Chinese dissidents in any country and dragging them back to face court, violating borders and everything. It's crazy.
Well, after the show last week, I don't know if I should say this, but I asked Andrew, I said, who at the top, right? And I said, who did it? And he said, well, it's at the top. And then after the show, Kelly said Obama and China. And I was like, oh. So now, I mean, listen, we know that this didn't happen alone. There's somebody behind it. And maybe someday we'll find out and we can look back at this show and say, wow, you were right. So I'd like to know.
You can go back to a live nationwide radio show I did right before COVID started, and I pointed out China's involvement way before it ever hit the news. It's all online. I predicted COVID was coming, and I predicted where it came from and what happened. So it's there. It's out there. China's very nefarious.
You're agreeing that the Bidens were behind it. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them.
I'm not necessarily buying into them being behind it. I'm saying more, I feel like they knew. And behind it, I don't think that Joe can plan to put his pants on in the morning straight without someone else. So sorry, I don't mean to insult, but
no, that's okay. I would say, though, let's not forget you do have a crackhead that became like the de facto chief of staff for those weeks right before the assassination attempt. So he'd know the right people.
He would. And
oh
Jill.
My gosh. Well, I really appreciate this. And, I just wanted to, let Andrew have his say and get through this. You can get him, you can find him at psychic, what does that say? Psychic
mediumreading.org.
Psychic medium reading or I had a psychic medium reading with him this week and he was phenomenal. And I suggest that if you're looking for a good psychic, he's the guy besides Rebecca Fearing, who also is available. You can text her at 818, what is it?
818-310-6748.
Yeah, so, if you go on my Instagram or if you go on our website, you can find the links to all these great psychics. I'm going to have my psychic, what did I used to call my page? My cast of clairvoyants on my, on callingout.show.com. So, and then also, you can also go see our favorite investigative conspiracy
Intelligence officer.
I don't even know all the words for these things. You can tell I'm not as well read as Drew, but thank you, Brian, for bringing all this information forward and having a good sense of humor with me and talking about these horrible things in the world that we have to think about. But it's a lot on your shoulders, and we appreciate your hard work.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate it. And Andrew, I appreciate yours, and I've worked with a lot of people in your profession, so definitely I would definitely check out what this man is saying.
Thank you, Brian.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. All right. Well, and you'll see him again sometime soon. And also, I hope you guys have a great day. And I'm going to close this out with
Thank you, Susan.
my fabulous husband who.
So very interesting stuff, and I like the way we found common threads in all these different topics and different ways of looking at it. But since I just want to maybe finish with Rebecca, because so much about what we ended up talking about was speculation, and let's have Rebecca speculate from her perspective. Things like, for instance, this observation that there's so many Chinese nationals coming across the border. Will they be able to hurt us from within, do you think? Because you had said there would be no hot war with China, but maybe there would be some sort of cold war or some sort of infiltration that we hadn't really seen before. No?
You know what? I'm not going to say what I don't see.
Yeah.
So at this point, I have to say no.
And I spend a lot of time these days upset. I'm upset about the world, the country, so the rhetoric, the behavior of media. Let me just ask about the media. Some news just came out that Warner and that whole the holding company above CNN has now been burdened to the tunes of $10 billion by CNN, and they're going to have to do something to correct that. Are we going to see a readjustment of journalism and media to start doing their job rather than just giving opinions on television and newspapers?
Yes.
Okay, that's very good news, because I spent a lot of time upset about that. I'm also upset about the world that young people see before them. They seem very pessimistic. They don't necessarily even show interest in American history or the American political system. Will that change, and how do you imagine that might change?
I have to say yes. Right now, I think they're more focused on the job markets.
Yes, which is not great.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not easy, because even though you've come out with your degrees and all this kind of stuff, but the job markets aren't good right now.
Yeah.
And so I think once that gets better, that they probably will be more interested in that.
Makes sense to me.
And scholastic change, what
So it's about the economy, stupid, as the Clinton campaign said. Scholastic change?
what was your question for her?
That was it.
No,
Was
I mean,
it?
what did you ask her?
I asked her first, would the media change? Yes. Would it go back to doing journalism and being sane and not just giving opinions? And would young people have optimism and interest in the American system again? Would they feel good about it because they feel so down on it now?
Yeah.
She said yes. When the economy gets better, they will feel better and be more interested. That makes sense to me. I mean, and people are, maybe you don't remember this, those of you that are down on the system, this is Bill Clinton's original campaign slogan was, "It's the economy, stupid," which is the case. Everything really is, it's homo economicus when you get right down to it. We are very economical beings. But not economical. We are, as much as we are social, we are part of economic connections with each other.
Yes, for sure. Unless we all become communists.
Well, but that's another system, but it's a different kind of
Are we going to
relationship.
be communists one day?
No.
See?
Run by
See?
AI bots?
Well, like talking to Rebecca, I feel better. I feel more optimistic.
She always brings light and love with
Yeah.
her
Well,
being.
she opened by saying she doesn't see it, she won't say it.
Yeah, I'm not just gonna, just go off the cuff. I didn't see it, so I'm not saying it. At this point, that's it.
Well, that's good news. Well, thank you, Drew, for being a part of this
Interesting,
today.
really interesting. I like the way you organize these
you.
guests.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
particularly,
Susan.
yeah, particularly I walk away with amongst. I'm glad we ended on this note, but I feel like I'm fascinated that Brian O'Shea has relied on psychics in the past. That's very interesting to me. I'm fascinated by that whole story about what you brought up about the
Or metaverse.
medical examiner. Thank you.
Oh, medical.
Yeah,
Yes.
and the missing guy, and the fact that there's so many things, and the lack of transparency about all this. There's so many interesting questions, and then also with Joe Allen, this phenomenon of humans doing the same thing over and over and over and over again,
Yeah.
with the same
Well,
intent,
history-
but in different technological contexts,
History
but doing the
precedes
same
itself.
thing.
This is not,
It
it's
echoes.
just in a different,
Yeah, it's a different context,
it's in a
and
different time and space. But
it's just a really interesting observation to me. And to me, what ties that all together is his observation about the pharaohs and the captains of tech industries today have had the same wishes with the same nonsense they're trying to do to make themselves eternal. And just interesting to me. Here
so
we
I
are,
also
just humans after all.
I didn't say this before they left, but if you guys want to get in touch with Joe Allen, you can find him at JoeBot XYZ on Twitter. And then he has this Substack, Singularity Weekly. So it's joebot.substack.com, Singularity Weekly. And he writes all these great articles in there. Get the book Dark Aeon, as well as the socials for Brian O'Shea is at Brian O'Shea on, at Brian O'Shea Spy, SPI, on Twitter. And then he's also available at I think he's on the Daily Clout with Naomi Wolf, and he has his podcast there.
Dailyclout.io, they call it.
Yeah,
Clout,
dailyclout.io. So, look them up. You can find them. I put all their links in my Instagram post, so you guys can find them there. If you guys want to read more about this or you want to know more about them, great people. And also Rebecca Fearing. You can find her at RebeccaFearing.com as well. So I don't know what the next episode is, if it's going to happen. Something came up, but Drew will be having his next show tomorrow
11:30.
at 11:30 a.m.
Tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. We are...
Ask Dr. Drew.
Yes, we are back to... I'll get you the guest name. Give me a second.
Yeah, we have a great lineup this week. We're doing early
Brandon
shows.
Tatum.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week.
Interesting.
He's a former
fellow.
police officer.
And let's see. Right. And is he going to talk about some of the same stuff we were just discussing here, Caleb?
Some of it, yeah. He's going to go into that, and then also, what was the other topic he's going to do? It was really interesting. I think it was.
Looking it up right now.
It was about Tim Walz and the COVID lockdown. How Tim Walz, who is now the potential vice president, how he created a hotline in his state so that neighbors could snitch on each other if they caught anybody breaking lockdowns during COVID. So we're going to talk about that, and hopefully not an idea that he would want to implement countrywide.
Oh my God, it's just unthinkable. I again, this is the stuff I get upset about. Made me feel better again, Rebecca. I'm so disturbed by government overreach and the excesses and the feeling of they're at their liberty to just control our lives however they wish. Is that going to settle down, or is that going to get worse before it does?
We need to take control of our lives. We need to get out of our phones. We need to get flip phones. Live on the earth.
Rebecca,
I think it's gonna get better.
okay, good. Needs to.
I really do.
Can't stand it. It's driving me out of my mind. But I think we have to fight for it. I think free speech. I think fighting for free speech.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So that we're on the right course here to make sure it happens.
Yeah, we need free speech, but we need to also connect as humans and stand up against these injustices. Wearing a mask, putting a mask on a 2-year-old, running away from the flu, like it was so ridiculous. And that,
here's what was ridiculous. I had at the airport today. So we're having there's an outbreak of COVID internationally right now, and it's a pretty nasty variant. Yeah. But at the airport today, I watched people wearing an N95 mask, and I thought, okay. I mean, if you wore it from the second you walked in, and you do not take it off for any reason, no reason, until you get back outside at your destination. Okay, that might do a little something to reduce your risk. And then I flashed on a friend of mine who's a doctor who was wearing a mask in a setting where I didn't think it was appropriate. She said, well, I don't want to get this thing. 3 weeks later, she had it. And I thought, yeah, that's the point. You can't, there's just no way to prevent it, even unless you are perfect with the use of a perfectly fitting N95 mask. And that's just not realistic with a respiratory virus. So that's
we're sheeple that we follow these rules, and that's what the whole the AI universe is going to do. So it's going to suck you in, and it's going to spit you out.
We didn't get into that too much with Joe Allen because we don't really understand it.
No, but I see how I'm going to predict that we are going to have this like powerful tech world built by Meta, Google, all these companies, and these guys that are running these companies are all going to live on a farm somewhere with a big family.
We watched somebody do that this weekend.
We're all spinning around in the metaverse of. There is a virtual metaverse that is being produced right now by these big entities, and I worry about that. That's what I worry about. But maybe Rebecca can make me feel better at dinner.
Don't worry about it.
We're letting our imaginations take over.
We'll be dead long before it's an issue. But
Anyways,
that's a nice way of saying that.
Support the teams of people that support us by checking out our sponsors on the extras. And thank you so much.
Can I talk a little bit about two of them that you did not show the ads on?
Yes, you may.
Okay, so True Niagen is something I've been taking for 10 years. We were very pleased to bring them on board. I take about 1,000 milligrams a day. Check it out for yourself. NR, nicotinamide riboside, is a really important anti-aging supplement. There's one other supplement you should be taking, that's fatty 15, which is pentadecanoic acid. Some new research just came out that showed that from the UC San Diego's excellent double-blind placebo-controlled study that 2/3 of us are deficient in this fatty acid, and that supplementing with the fatty 15 will replete that. and reverse the cellular fragility syndrome. So both the NR, which is great for your mitochondria and your oxidative state of your cells, and the fatty 15, the C15 that reduces the cellular fragility, the membranes are stabilized. These two things are very potent anti-aging influences, as well as influences against the illnesses associated with aging. So I take it. I make the family take it. You should take it, Rebecca.
It's good stuff.
I'm a big fan of these things.
You're going to keep me sane.
There's some other things you can do too. I'm going to come up with a little bit later as we move along here, but not right now.
Enough.
But these two right now, I can say with absolute categorical certainty,
I want to
take it and will not stop.
I want to mention something that Trey, Myths and Tunes Trey's Myths and Tunes said, keep calling out Susan, Drew, Emily, and Kaleb. This show is cool, bringing it into the multidimensional realms. And I heard you say namaste. So namaste, Dr. Drew crew. Love y'all. So love you too. Thank you. We love that. And we'll keep bringing it back.
Yep.
So share if you care, everyone. Ta-ta.
Tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. There it is. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. Of course, I'm a fan of the healthy aging supplement True Niagen. I've been taking it almost for a decade myself. This supplement boosts NAD, which your cells need to survive properly metabolically, and it goes down as we age. It does so with a nutrient called nicotinamide riboside, or NR, specifically patented form of NR called Niagen. It's the most efficient and trusted NAD booster. NAD can also play a role in reproductive health. Boosting NAD is recommended with prenatal vitamins for women over 30 looking to start a family. Here's Dr. Amy, also known as the Egg Whisperer, a highly influential specialist in this area.
That was when I said, this is amazing. I need every single person going through fertility to take it. I not only take it myself, my patients have shared stories. They took it and then they got pregnant naturally. And that's really my goal, is I want people to empower themselves with the tools so that they can get pregnant without my help.
True Niagen is an amazing NAD booster. You're going to want to add it to your reproductive health arsenal. And of course, it's in our family of Dr. Drew sponsors. Go to drdrew.com/True Niagen for 20% off your order. That is drdrew.com/True Niagen. Enter Dr. Drew at checkout for 20% off.